There are moments in life that do not announce themselves with thunder, only a quiet ache in the chest, a gentle question that hums beneath the noise. Am I ready? Not for the next goal, the next person, or the next chapter, but to heal. It doesn't always happen after the storm. Sometimes, it begins in the silence that follows. You find yourself standing in the same room, surrounded by the same objects, the same faces, but something within you feels slightly shifted, as if the soul is turning toward the light after too long staring into shadow. This is not transformation yet. It's awareness. And awareness is the birthplace of all healing. You might not even recognize it at first. It comes disguised as fatigue, as boredom with old chaos, as sudden disinterest in people who once set your nervous system alight. You tell yourself you're being distant, unmotivated, detached, but something wiser inside you whispers, no, this is peace trying to find its way in. Healing never rushes the body. It waits until your mind is ready to meet it halfway. When you're ready to heal, it's not that the pain disappears. It's that you start to look at it differently. The psychologist Carl Rogers once wrote that, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." That is the quiet alchemy of healing. Change born not from force, but from compassion. Imagine standing at the edge of a forest at dawn. 4 years, you've been running. From the trees, from the dark, from the echoes of your own memories. But now your feet pause on their own. You realize the forest isn't chasing you. It never was. It's waiting to be explored. You take a breath and notice the trembling of your hands. That trembling is not weakness. It's energy shifting from survival to awareness. That's what it means to be ready to heal. When your curiosity finally outweighs your fear. In psychology, this shift often mirrors the regulation of the amygdala, the small, almond-shaped cluster deep within the brain responsible for detecting threats. When we live in chronic stress or trauma, the amygdala stays on high alert, flooding the body with cortisol and adrenaline, preparing us for danger that never ends. But over time, through reflection, therapy, or gentle awareness, the prefrontal cortex begins to re-engage. The reasoning, self-aware part of the mind starts to whisper to the amygdala, "We're safe now." And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the body begins to believe it. This is why healing feels slow. Because it is not a revelation, but a rewiring. And yet, healing is not linear. There are days when you feel like sunlight, steady and open, and others when you collapse under the weight of old wounds. But here's what changes. Instead of spiraling into shame, you begin to observe. Observation, that gentle noticing, is your nervous system learning safety. Each moment you name your feeling without judgment, you build a new neural pathway for peace. You're not broken for relapsing into old patterns. You're human, learning to exist differently. Many people think healing begins when they feel better. But truthfully, healing begins when they stop running from what hurts. When they can sit with the ache and say, "I don't have to fix you right now. I just need to understand you." That's the turning point. When your inner voice softens from critic to companion. At that moment, your inner world begins to reorganize. Memories that once caused pain now invite reflection. People who triggered anxiety now inspire boundaries. The brain, ever adaptable, starts to interpret old sensations differently. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to rewire based on new experiences. But you don't need the word to know the truth of it. You can feel it when your heart no longer clenches the same way it used to. Imagine Asha, she's 27, sitting by a cafe window at dusk, watching people pass beneath the golden light. Her tea has gone cold, but she doesn't mind. For months, she's been attending therapy, writing in her journal, practicing being kind to herself, but some days it still feels heavy. Today, though, she noticed something new. The man who reminds her of an old heartbreak walks by, and instead of her chest tightening, there's only a small sigh. A release. She realizes she can think of him without the sharp sting of resentment. That's healing. Not the absence of pain, but the transformation of it into understanding. Eli, 24, kneels beside his wilted houseplant at home. Once upon a time, he would have berated himself for forgetting to water it, for failing again, for being lazy. But now he just smiles softly and refills the can. He knows healing isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming patient. He whispers, "We'll try again," to both the plant and himself. That's healing too. The language of self-compassion replacing the old script of shame. Healing, as psychology reminds us, isn't an event but a pattern. It's the gradual activation of your parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural rest and restore mode. It's when your breathing slows, your heart rate steadies, your mind becomes capable of reflection instead of reaction. It's when the body finally learns it's safe to relax. Lila, 29, sits by a rain-streaked window on an overcast day. She used to panic when she felt sadness rise. It felt like quicksand. But now she watches the rain, lets it fall, and simply breathes. She has learned that emotions, like weather, move through. You can't stop them, but you can shelter within yourself as they pass. She no longer asks, "Why am I sad again?" But instead, "What is my sadness trying to say today?" That's emotional intelligence. Not the absence of feeling, but the fluency of it. And then there's Noah, 31, sitting on the edge of his unmade bed at dawn. Once, mornings were battles. The mind raced before his feet even touched the floor. But now, he allows himself to sit, to feel the morning light spill across his hands, to take one breath before the day begins. Healing has taught him that productivity is not peace. That presence, even in stillness, is enough. Healing often begins with disillusionment. You wake up one day and realize the things that once felt intoxicating, chaos, validation, constant doing, no longer satisfy you. Your nervous system starts to crave stillness instead of stimulation. That's your biology evolving with your awareness. You're no longer addicted to adrenaline. You're craving regulation. And though it feels unfamiliar, it's what peace has always looked like. Psychology calls this self-regulation, but it's more than a term. It's learning to live without needing a crisis to feel alive. It's recognizing that calm is not boredom. It's safety. And when you're ready to heal, you stop mistaking stillness for emptiness. You start realizing that peace is full of sensation, full of quiet magic. Healing changes the people you're drawn to. You begin to notice that your heart no longer chases what hurts it. That the thrill of emotional inconsistency loses its grip. You stop romanticizing unpredictability because your nervous system no longer equates chaos with love. That's not coldness, that's growth. That's the biology of healing. Rewriting your attachment system. The body is learning what safety feels like, and the mind follows. In attachment theory, our early bonds shape the way we love. Avoidant attachment fears closeness. Anxious attachment fears distance. But when healing begins, you start to find a new middle ground. Secure attachment. It's the ability to be both connected and free, loving and self-contained. You realize you can care deeply without losing yourself. That's emotional maturity. That's what readiness for healing looks like. Not needing others to fill your emptiness but inviting them to share your fullness. Amara, 26, sits alone in her room under golden light, hugging a pillow close to her chest. She's learning to be with her own company. Not as punishment but as presence. The old her would scroll through messages, trying to distract herself from loneliness. The new her closes her eyes and whispers, "I'm here." And for the first time, that's enough. This is what healing looks like. Not a straight line but a spiral. You return to old wounds with new awareness, and each time, the sting lessens. You find yourself forgiving, not to excuse, but to release. You begin to see the people who hurt you as humans shaped by their own unhealed pain. Empathy doesn't erase boundaries. It strengthens them. Because now, you understand that compassion includes yourself. Jonah, 33, lies back on his couch, headphones around his neck. He once drowned emotions in noise, but tonight he sits in silence. He realizes he's not afraid of the quiet anymore. Silence, he's learned, is not emptiness. It's information. It's where you meet the parts of yourself that words can't reach. Psychology calls this interoceptive awareness, the ability to sense your inner states, to know when your body is calm, tense, tired, or at peace. It's how you reconnect with yourself after years of disconnection. Healing is not the absence of triggers. It's the ability to respond differently to them. You stop asking, "Why do I still feel this way?" and start saying, "Ah, here it is again. What does it need this time?" You stop fighting the wave and learn to surf it. Your nervous system, once hijacked by fear, begins to trust your awareness. That's self-leadership, the foundation of mental wellness. To heal is to begin honoring your nervous system's pace. Sometimes that means resting instead of rushing. Sometimes it means saying no even when your mind screams yes. Sometimes, it means letting go before you're ready, trusting that readiness often arrives mid-leap. Healing doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for presence. The mirror scene. Dusk falls softly over a quiet room. You stand before your reflection, eyes tired but kind. You remember the years you couldn't look at yourself without flinching, the seasons you mistook survival for living. But now, you see something different. A gentleness that wasn't there before. The reflection isn't flawless. It's honest. And honesty, you realize, is peace. Your reflection blinks back at you. Not as a stranger but as a witness. You whisper, "I'm trying," and the mirror smiles. That's when you know you're ready to heal. When you stop trying to become someone else and start returning to who you already are. In the language of the psyche, healing is integration. Bringing together the fragmented parts of the self that trauma or shame once scattered. It's allowing your inner child, your protector, your dreamer, and your critic to all coexist without conflict. It's holding your own complexity with tenderness. And in that integration, your energy changes. You speak softer, not because you've lost your fire, but because you've learned you don't need to shout to be heard. You love slower, not because you fear heartbreak, but because you cherish depth. You forgive easier, not because you forget, but because you no longer want to carry what weighs you down. In the quiet language of the nervous system, readiness to heal feels like exhaling. It's the body saying, "We can rest now." Science meets spirituality here. In the way the body mirrors belief. Each act of mindfulness, every compassionate thought, releases oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. The body rewards safety. The mind rewires through consistency. Healing, then, is not magic, it's biology woven with intention. You begin to notice small, invisible victories. You pause before reacting. You breathe through discomfort. You ask for help. You forgive your humanness. Each of these moments is proof that the neural pathways of compassion are strengthening. This is why psychology calls self-awareness a protective factor. Because knowing yourself reduces emotional reactivity and increases resilience. There is something profoundly sacred in realizing you don't have to be healed to be worthy of love. That worthiness isn't a reward for recovery. It's the soil from which recovery grows. Healing is not about erasing pain but learning to hold it gently. To turn it over in your hands like sea glass until it becomes smooth. The journey of healing is the art of returning. To your body, your breath, your boundaries, your being. It's remembering that you were never truly broken, only disconnected. That wholeness was never something to earn, but something to remember. So how do you know you're ready to heal? When your pain becomes your teacher instead of your prison. When you seek understanding instead of escape. When you begin to crave truth more than comfort. When you no longer need closure to move on. When silence feels like peace instead of punishment. When your empathy includes yourself. When you look at your reflection and think, "I deserve softness too." You know you're ready when you stop waiting for the world to apologize for what it took, and start building something beautiful from what remains. Healing is not about who hurt you last, but about who you become next. It's not about finding a version of yourself untouched by pain, but about discovering the one who learned to live through it with grace. There will still be days when you forget, when the old fear knocks, when the body tenses, when the mind replays old memories like static. But each time you return to awareness, each time you breathe instead of break, you reaffirm your readiness. Your healing is not a destination. It's a rhythm. Some days it sounds like laughter, others like tears. Some days it's silence, others a heartbeat. But always, it's alive. And maybe, healing isn't about becoming who you were before the pain. Maybe it's about becoming someone new who can hold both joy and sorrow without splitting in two. Because you, in all your complexity, were never meant to stay wounded. You were meant to learn the language of your own mind, to dance with your shadows, to love yourself in every season of becoming. So tonight, as you sit in your quiet room, the light low, the air gentle, the noise of the day softening, know this: readiness doesn't come from perfection. It comes from surrender. From that small voice inside those whispers, "I'm tired of surviving. I want to live." That whisper is sacred. It's the soul's way of saying, "It's time." And when you follow it, when you breathe into its truth, you'll find that healing was never something outside you waiting to be found. It was always inside you, waiting to be welcomed home. So here you are, tired, tender, brave. The light touches your skin just right. The world hums quietly beyond the window. And for the first time in a long while, you're not running. You're simply being. This stillness, this awareness, this softness, is the beginning of everything you once thought you lost. This is how you know you're ready to heal.